Hello and welcome to Update Novi. I'm Cheryl Walsh, your host, and with me today at SWAT Studios is our very own Deputy City Clerk, Courtney Hansen. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today. It's a very important event we have coming up, not only just in your offices, but actually citywide, that I think people might not take as responsibly as we'd like in some instances, and that is their right to vote. We have on Tuesday, August 5th,
Yes.
a primary election coming up, and there's all kinds of items on the ballot. Do you want to share a little bit about maybe what's on the ballot or what people will expect to see on August 5th?
Yep. This ballot will actually have its primary election to select the candidates that will be on the November ballot.
Okay.
So we will have candidates for the governor's race as well as some local things such as the court judges, and we will actually have local proposals for charter amendment that I believe you'll be speaking about.
Yes, you're right, we will. One thing I think people don't realize is that our city's clerk's office, that overseeing the elections might be, perhaps is, the most important thing that our city clerk's office does.
Absolutely.
You are tasked by the state of Michigan to ensure that all elections are run according to state law.
Yes.
And we like that to be done smoothly as possible, correct?
Yes, we do.
And how do you guys accomplish that? You have a great group of volunteers.
We do. We've got an internal staff of the city clerk, myself, the deputy, and 3 other permanent positions. And on election day, we employ at least 5 election workers at each precinct location.
Oh my goodness, so that's probably 100, over 100.
It's typically well over 100, yes.
Oh my goodness. And we have polls throughout every location of the city, and polls are open on election days from 7 to
8 p.m.
Okay,
Yep.
7 a.m. to 8 p.m. We do have a little change. All of our polling locations are it's on their voter ID card,
Yes.
voter registration card, but people that may be confused or have a question, cityofnovi.org has all of that information. But we do have 2 changes, I believe, coming up for just the August 5th election.
Yep, just for the August 5th election, we will have 2 temporary locations. The first is Precinct 8, typically votes at Meadowbrook Elementary. This time, I believe they will be right next door at Cross Point Meadows Church.
Okay. Oh, yep. Very good.
The second change, again, is just temporary, is Precinct 12, typically votes at Hickory Woods Elementary, and they will be at Maple Manor, which is
Okay.
up at the corner of 14 Mile and Novi Road.
Oh, yep. Very good. People probably call your office many times a day. Summer. And I want to vote. I'm going to be out of town. I'm sure they're asking, how do they get an absentee ballot? Or maybe they don't realize and think that absentee ballots are just maybe for our older adults, but they're actually for anybody that may be away from the community, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How do they go about receiving an absentee ballot? Can they fill out something online? Do they have to come into your office? How does that work?
There's actually quite a few ways you can
Okay.
get an absentee ballot. If you just call us, we can mail out an application and you can mail it back, and then we would mail you a ballot. We can do that anywhere in the United States. Or if it's convenient, you can come into our office, regular business hours. Also, the Saturday before the election on August 2nd from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. to obtain an absentee ballot.
So people, even on the Saturday prior, if they know they're going to be out of town that first week in August, they can still come in on that Saturday prior and get an absentee ballot, fill it out then, and cast their ballot right there at City Hall.
Yes.
Very nice and convenient. Those people that might be new to our community, unfortunately, the last day to register was Monday, July 7th, I believe.
Correct.
But we still encourage them to register to vote because there is, as you mentioned, a general election in November.
Yep, coming up on November 4th.
November 4th. So if they have not registered currently, please do so, and then they'll be eligible to vote in the November 4th election.
Yep.
Anything else you think, any other like hot topics for elections that people have questions about or of that nature? Sample ballots, will those be available?
We do have sample ballots available in our office.
Okay.
We don't post them to our city website. However, there is a website, michigan.gov/vote, where you can type in your personal information and it will actually tell you where your voting location is, as well as provide you a copy of a sample ballot specific to you.
Very nice. So people then will be able to see all of the candidates for the judicial positions or state reps or whatever the case might be, wherever there's a primary and someone's running against another.
Yes.
As well as any school issues or, as we shared, and we'll talk about the upcoming proposed charter amendment.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. I cannot stress enough that this is like one of the essential rights that everybody's given once they hit, is it 18 still? Okay, just making sure. Once they hit 18, that it is their right to vote, and our community functions well because of their civic involvement. So I know it's a lot more work when the numbers go up for you guys, but we love to see the civic engagement.
We do too.
You do too. Well, good. And now that everything's electronic, it makes it so much easier, doesn't it?
Yes.
So people, I remember as a kid, you won't remember this, but I remember going in with my parents to vote and standing in line for hours winding through high school gymnasiums or cafeterias because everything was manual at that time, and the results took forever to get in. Now that it's all electronic, people are in and out of there in no time.
Yep, we've made a huge change with shortening the voting lines.
So that's a plus.
Yes.
That's a plus. So thank you so much for joining us, and continued success in all the things that you and our awesome clerk's office do each day. Everyone, don't just use them to vote, but use them for your passports and what else, you guys?
Notary services, certain licenses and permits.
Good deal. Good deal. Thank you again for joining us.
Happy to be here.
And please stay tuned, because when we come back, former Mayor David Landry is going to join me here at the studio and talk about the Charter Review Committee, which he is a part of, and a proposed amendment on the August 5th ballot. Don't go away.
They said I couldn't dream. Called me a piece of trash and swore that's all I'd ever be. Said a bottle couldn't see the ocean. Give up. Go back to the dumpster. But I didn't listen. I made my way. And now, I am what I've always wanted to be.
Welcome back to Update Novi. With me now today at SWAC Studios, which is a total honor and privilege. I never thought that, I hate to say never thought that we'd be back in this spot, but with me here at SWAC now is former Mayor David Landry. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you
I will
very
say
much.
that. And esteemed member of the the Charter Review Committee. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
On the first segment, we actually got to talk with Deputy City Clerk Courtney Hansen a little bit about the importance of voting and where to vote, etc. And I thought it'd be a great idea to have you on and share a little bit about what's going on with the way Novi is governed and the ordinances, and which dates back to 1969. 1969. Last year, a Charter Review Committee was established to look at the whole document, and maybe you can pick up from there and share with us a little bit.
Sure. Novi started out as a township in the 1830s, and we became a city in 1969. And cities have city charters, just like the Constitution of the city. And when the city residents at that time became a city and voted on it, they enacted the charter. Well, the charter was reviewed in 1979. 1977, I'm sorry, 8 years later. And it had been in existence for about 8 years, and they looked at it again, made some amendments. Then it has not been reviewed for 36 years after that, from 1977 until last year. And the elected officials and the administration, working with the charter year in and year out, would find this section may be outdated, and from 1977 to the present, naturally, a lot of things have changed. So City Council decided that they would create this Charter Review Committee to take a look at the charter and advise council on whether we thought it still worked. Do we need a whole new charter, or can we just make some necessary tweaks? So the Charter Review Committee was created. It consists of 3 elected officials: Mayor Gatt, Councilmember Wayne Roble, and Councilmember Laura Marie Casey, 2 administrative members, Acting City Manager Victor Cardenas and City Clerk Marianne Cornelius, and 4 members of the community: myself, Phil Superfisky, Tom Marcus, and Doreen Popard. And interestingly enough, both Phil Superfisky and Tom Marcus were in Novi in '77 when the last charter was passed. So they had some historical perspective.
Definitely.
And what the committee did, Cheryl, was, and I'm very proud of what the committee did, so as not to have any preconceived notions, we went through the charter starting in section 1 all the way to section 17. There's 17 sections. Each section has many, many subsections, about 100 and some total subsections. We did it starting with section 1 all the way through. We looked at each section and we took a vote. We discussed, do we think there needs to be some changes? The committee came up at the end of last year with 19 recommended changes. Our conclusion was charter still works. We do not need a new charter, but it does need some updating. So we obviously can't ask the voters to weigh in on 19 separate issues. So, and interestingly enough, whenever you go to the people on a proposed charter amendment, you first have to go to the Attorney General. The Attorney General has to approve the wording. So the wording that appears on the ballot for each voter has been approved by the Attorney General. And by way of an example, the committee may suggest that we propose to the voters, would you like to amend this or not? The Attorney General will come back and go, no, you got to ask that in 3 questions. So we may think it's 1 question. The Attorney General may say you have to break that up into 3 because they are very persnickety about being very straightforward, not leaning one way or the other. So last year we went to the voters on 5 potential charter changes. The voters said yes on 3 and no on 2. The system worked. Yep. And so we're back this year. We're only proposing 1 vote during the primary ballot, and that is for the voters to consider whether to increase the compensation for the mayor and the city council members. So that's the issue that's up in August.
So compensation, a lot of people think that a mayor and city council members, still, believe it or not, we get questions that they're full-time. A lot of people in other communities think that that is your full-time job. And you know, the demand when you were mayor was people thought that you could be places at 10 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, nights, weekends.
Yes.
They didn't understand that you as a mayor still had an outside job, 40 plus hours a week, plus your responsibilities as mayor or city council member for the city of Novi. As such, your compensation was?
The mayor receives $20 per meeting that they attend, and the city council members receive $15 per meeting. It averages out to about $800 a year for the mayor and about $600 a year for city council members.
And when we say meetings, we say council meetings, budget meetings, those things. A ribbon cutting? Nothing.
No.
A
Goal
meeting
setting?
with the developer?
No.
Nothing. Goal setting? Nothing. I mean, that's all on
no.
personal time, personal expenses,
Absolutely.
et cetera.
Absolutely.
So the meetings that council and mayor are compensated for are just those that are regularly scheduled or emergency meetings if necessary for budget or et cetera, but that are held most likely in the council chambers.
Publicly noticed meetings. Absolutely. Those are the only meetings that under the current system that they are compensated for. That's correct.
Proposed charter amendment then is suggesting that the per meeting rate, $20, $15, is then basically done away with.
Correct.
And it becomes a flat annual fee.
That is the way most communities do it. And what the committee did was we discussed this at length, and the committee went out and benchmarked Novi against some other communities. And we looked at what do other communities that are about the same size as Novi. We looked at Farmington Hills, which is 80,000. Novi is 56,900 right now. We looked at Roseville, Battle Creek, St. Clair Shores, they're in the 50,000 range. Historical perspective, in 1969, the city of Novi was 9,900 people. So if you take 9,900 to 56, we're about 6 times larger now than we were when the compensation was set. And we benchmarked against these, and factually, all of those communities, they pay between $700 and $7,500 for the mayor and $10,000 flat fee, and council members are between $4,000 and about $8,000. And the Charter Review Committee suggested for the voters to consider paying the mayor $6,500 a year and city council members $4,500, and that's what the people would have an opportunity to weigh in on.
Which, by what you just shared, is still below the average compensation of comparative communities.
Correct.
In the area.
Correct.
So, and I think it's important for people to know that mayor and council cannot give themselves a raise at all. This all is, it is dictated in the charter. That is how the city is governed, and the vote of the people determines whether or not the city council compensation or any other proposed amendments go forward in the future.
That's a very important point. When I reported the results of the committee to the city council, and the committee suggested that the people be allowed to decide this issue, I made it very clear at council that this was not, and I specifically said I would hate for any newspaper to report that city council votes to recommend to give themselves a raise. All city council did was vote to allow the people to decide this. And the city council's taking no position, the city's taking no official position, nor should it. It's merely a matter of letting the people decide, after 37 years, does the position of mayor and does the position of city council, should it receive some additional compensation after 37 years or remain the same as it did in 1969? And that's the issue.
Very good, very good. Any other thoughts about your experiences on the Charter Review Committee?
You know, it's very interesting. It's a sort of a historical look back. Last year, one of the things one of the things that we recommended was the gender neutrality. In 1969, everything in the charter was he this, he that, and Marianne Cornelius, the clerk, is sitting there, and I'm reading the clerk, he shall do this, and we started laughing, of course, and we recommended that, and the voters agreed to install gender neutrality. Another interesting thing was the 1969 charter specifically labeled those departments in the city. The city shall consist of the Treasury Department and the Water and Sewer Department. Well, nobody in 1969 would ever even have thought of an information technology department. No one would have thought of that. No. And so we recommended that we change the administrative plan to allow the city manager to determine the number of departments. And then, of course, the one that probably was the most, that got the most discussion was the publication issue, because there was no internet in 1969 or 77. And so that was one of the issues that the Attorney General broke into several issues for us. And it was interesting. The people decided, the question was, the current charter requires all notifications to be by newspaper or posting, tack it on the wall. Okay? Well, now it would be much easier to put it on the internet, and anybody can pull out an iPhone. And the voters said, yes, for general notices, we would agree the city can do it as an alternative on the internet. But for election results and ordinance changes, we still want newspaper. So no problem. That's what the people want. That's what the people will get. So those, it was sort of interesting. Those you find those. I'm not going to use the word antiquated, but those little twists in the charter, and that's what I mean when I say day in and day out the charter works pretty well. It just needs some tweaking.
Well, thank you for your continued service to the city. Amazing. A lot of people, I knew that wouldn't happen with you, leave their post as mayor and have had enough, and you have been actively involved in a number of different organizations on behalf of the city on this review committee, etc. So we thank you for your continued involvement. You are an essential piece to everything
Thank you very
we
much.
do.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So I guess we can end on encouraging people
Okay.
to go to the polls
Absolutely.
on August 5th.
Absolutely.
It is their city. And
their charter.
ultimately, their charter, their elected officials, their primary, it is their vote that makes things happen. So regardless of yay, a nay, or whatever,
Absolutely.
we
Absolutely.
encourage civic involvement.
Absolutely. Please vote.
So thank you for joining me here today, and we'll find something else to chat about in the near future, maybe arts and parks
that'd be
or
great.
something
That would
of
be
that
wonderful.
nature. So thank you again for your continued civic involvement, and thank you Novi viewing residents and business members for watching this edition of Update Novi. As always, all of the information that was shared here can be found on the city's website at cityofnovi.org. Until next time, take care.